Thank you to Dr. Susan Grayson for sponsoring this parsha in memory of her father, Philip Davidoff Feivel ben Shmuel Yitzchok Zichron Livrocha, whose yahrzeit was on the 21st of Sivan. His neshama should have an aliyah. Parshas Korach stands as a stark reminder of the delicate balance between leadership and insurrection, a balance that, when disturbed, can have catastrophic consequences. We've come to believe, mistakenly, that a few decades of relative political calm in the West mean we've perfected a system that guarantees stability thanks to our ability to evict leaders we don't like in democratic elections. But, as we've started to see all too clearly, democracy is far from a perfect system. Everyone loves to quote Winston Churchill, who famously said, "Democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others that have been tried." This aphorism, delivered during a speech in the House of Commons on November 11th, 1947, was Churchill's way of saying, after the Second World War against the fascists and the alarming rise of the despotic communist world under the Soviet Union, that democracy, for all its flaws, was the safest system. It had checks and balances that provided a safety net, protecting people from tyranny. What would Churchill say today, as Western democracies struggle to stave off and protect themselves from the rising numbers of voters within their electorates with extreme agendas, who shun all the values and ideals that the democratic system was meant to ensure would be preserved and upheld? The dramatic saga of Korach's rebellion at the dawn of Jewish history is rich with lessons that resonate today. It exposes the dangers of demagoguery and manipulating a system and those who are part of it to get the outcome you want, even if it's not good for the people you claim to represent and want to lead. It's a story that challenges us to reflect on the nature of leadership, the pitfalls of ambition, and, here's the religious bit, the consequences of undermining divine authority. Let's delve into this parsha and uncover the layers of meaning and relevance that can hopefully inspire and guide us today. So, who was Korach? Why did he emerge as a challenger? What was his story? Was he really such a bad man, or is it simply a case of history belonging to the victor? Moshe won, so Korach gets depicted as the baddie. Korach was a Levite, a Levi of notable pedigree. In fact, he was Moshe's first cousin. In other words, he wasn't just some disgruntled Israelite with a bone to pick. The Talmudic rabbis tell us that he was a brilliant man, intellectually superior, and a very prosperous man who managed to leave Egypt with huge wealth. I have no doubt that he was also tall, good-looking, well-spoken, charming, witty, and engaging. In short, he was natural leadership material, the type of person everyone looked up to. His challenge to Moshe was as bold as it was dangerous. Rav lochem ki kol ha'eda kulam kadoshim, u'v'soicham Hashem, u'madua tisnasu al kahal Hashem. You are guilty of overreach, Korach told Moshe. The whole community is holy, all of them, not just you and Aaron. And God is in their midst. So why then do you raise yourselves above God's congregation? With these fiery words, Korach wasn't just questioning Moshe and Aaron's leadership. He was shaking the very foundations of their authority. He was basically saying, hey, who died and made you the boss? It's the biblical version of the kid who told everyone, 1 second, the king has no clothes on. Korach was saying what might have been on everyone's mind. Why should Moshe be the leader in perpetuity? Who says he is the best choice? In fact, maybe he's the worst choice. Why are we stuck with him? Shouldn't we try someone else? But don't be fooled by Korach's seemingly noble rhetoric. As Rabbi Jonathan Sacks put it so well, Korach's argument was nothing more than a thinly veiled grab for power. He wasn't some champion of equality fighting for the underdog. He was after the top job for himself. Like the so-called leaders of these protesters who put up encampments on college campuses and claimed to be protesting for Palestinians in Gaza, Korach wasn't interested in the people he claimed to represent. He just wanted to shake the foundations of Moshe and Aaron's authority so that he could use the ensuing chaos to grab power for himself and his cronies. His claim that all the community are holy was nothing more than a twisted tactic aimed at capturing the hearts of the masses so that they would welcome him into power when his coup was successful. But Korach was very slick. He knew how to play the crowd, tapping perfectly into their frustrations and aspirations, although clearly his real goal was to tear down the unique roles that God had carefully assigned. By doing what he did, he wasn't just challenging Moshe and Aaron. They were merely foils in his plans. No, he was challenging God's divine order itself. Just like those who claim to be against Israel. In actual fact, they're against America. They're against democracy. They're against true freedom of expression. And they are against the system they spuriously claim to be upholding. Korach's rebellion is a textbook example of the dangers of unchecked ambition. The Medrash tells us that Korach was driven by jealousy and a desire for personal aggrandizement. Despite his significant role as a Levi, as a Levite, he had his eyes set on the position of Kohen Gadol, the high priest, a role that God had specifically given to Aaron. Korach couldn't bear that, and he was willing to tear down the whole edifice just so that he could get his way. And Korach wasn't acting alone. As we all know, the disgruntled tend to team together, just like today with the far left teaming up with the radical Islamists. Their ideology is totally different, but their broad goals converge. They want to bring the whole house tumbling down. That's why Korach teamed up with Dosan and Aviram, two malcontents with a history of animosity against Moshe. And Korach also brought 250 prominent leaders on board for his revolution. These guys weren't just any rebels. The Torah describes them as princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. These fellows were big shots, influential figures, whose support gave Korach's rebellion some serious weight. And what their involvement shows us is just how easy it is to seduce even the most respected individuals when the carrot of power is dangled in front of them. What's more, Korach and his gang weren't genuine idealists. They claimed to be fighting for equality and justice, but in reality they were nothing more than power-hungry narcissists. They wrapped themselves in the cloak of noble causes, but their true aim was to dismantle the existing leadership and install themselves at the top. And, of course, they hated those who saw through their facade and called them out for what they truly were. As is always the case with Korach-type people, they projected their own flaws onto those they were fighting. In their narrative, it was Moshe who was the power-grabbing narcissist, whereas in reality, it was they who were the selfish, self-centered phonies. Let's be clear. This kind of insincerity is all too common. Just look around today. You'll see how many so-called leaders present themselves as champions of the people, while their actions reveal a thirst for power and a disdain for anyone who questions their motives. Korach and his cronies exemplify this hypocrisy. They manipulated the crowd's frustrations and ambitions, not for the community's benefit, but to satisfy their own egos and to grab power. Korach's rebellion wasn't about creating a fairer system. It was about tearing down what was divinely instituted to serve his own selfish ends. Korach's story is a timeless warning to us to watch out for those who masquerade as idealists but are, in fact, driven by narcissism and the hunger for power. Meanwhile, Moshe embodied humility and unwavering faith. He responds to Korach's challenge not with force, but with a test designed to reveal God's will. Each man is to take a firepan, place incense on it, and present it before God. The outcome of this exercise will determine the divinely chosen leader, and Moshe is quite happy, should it be God's will, for the outcome to be that Korach gets the top job. The climax of this confrontation is nothing short of miraculous. The earth opens up, swallows Korach and his followers, while fire consumes the 250 men offering incense. This dramatic display serves as a potent reminder of the consequences of defying divine order and challenging God's appointed leaders. Ultimately, the end result of narcissistic rebellions is chaos. The longer it goes on for, the worse it gets. In this case, the problem was nipped in the bud. That, in and of itself, may be the most important lesson of the Korach story. Don't allow the dissent to fester. Destroy it before it has a chance to infest the system, by which time it may be too late. It is also worth focusing on Moshe's response to Korach's rebellion. The response offers profound lessons in leadership. Faced with insurrection, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't assert his authority through coercion or intimidation. Instead, he falls on his face, which was a gesture of humility and supplication. Moshe's humility underscores a fundamental principle of Jewish leadership. True leaders serve not out of a desire for power, but out of a sense of duty to God and the community. If there is even a tinge of self-interest there, they are unsuited to the job. Moshe was the opposite of Korach. Moshe was only interested in the people. Korach was only interested in himself. The Rambam, in his commentary on Pirkei Avot, extols the virtue of humility, describing it as the crown of all virtues. Moshe, the greatest prophet and the greatest leader in Jewish history, epitomized humility, this trait. His humility should not be read as a sign of weakness, but rather as evidence of his deep faith and of his true commitment to divine service, the ultimate signs of suitability when it comes to being a leader. What does God want of me? How can I best serve the people He has asked me to lead? The themes of Parshas Korach are timeless, offering valuable insights for contemporary leadership and community dynamics. In today's world, where challenges to authority and leadership are commonplace, the lessons of Korach's rebellion are particularly pertinent. Despite the grim consequences of Korach's rebellion, the Parsha ultimately conveys a positive message about unity and divine purpose. The reaffirmation of Aaron's priesthood and the establishment of the Levites' role serve to strengthen the community's spiritual foundation. In the final analysis, stability is about the common bonds of the majority and not giving in to the demands and whims of the extremes. Those who lead on the extremes, even if they claim to represent the will of the people as a whole, never do. They will use emotive issues to trigger support, but when it comes down to it, they will always serve the interests of the margins over and above anything else. There is a beautiful story that encapsulates this message, told about the Chofetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan of Radin. At some point in his long life, there was a period of terrible communal strife. The warring factions all came to the saintly Chofetz Chaim to get his support. He listened patiently and told them all the same story. There were two farmers, he said, who constantly quarrelled about the ownership of a small piece of land. Eventually, they reconciled and decided to work the land together. As a result of their combined efforts, said the Chofetz Chaim, there was a bountiful harvest, which benefited not only the two farmers, but also the entire community. Once you find common ground and reject partisan squabbling, the results are always better for everyone, whatever shade of the spectrum they might be on. Following the rebellion, once Korach and his rebels were gone, God instructed Moshe Rabbeinu to collect staffs from the leaders of each tribe, including Aaron's staff, and placed them in the Ohel Moed, in the Mishkan. He told Moshe that the staff that blossomed would indicate who was God's chosen priest. The following day, Aaron's staff had not only blossomed, but also produced almonds, which was a clear sign of divine favor. The blossoming of Aaron's staff is rich with symbolism. The staff was nothing but a dead piece of wood, and yet it miraculously came to life, symbolizing that honorable leadership is a life-giving phenomenon. Almonds are also known for their rapid growth, signifying the swift and undeniable confirmation of Aaron's priesthood, quelling any lingering doubts about Aaron's legitimacy and reinforcing the divine order. In a world where extreme voices often dominate the conversation, Parshas Korach reminds us that true leadership is about finding common ground and serving the greater good. It's about upholding divine principles and fostering unity rather than sowing discord. Just as Aaron's staff blossomed and bore fruit, so too can our communities and our world thrive when we embrace genuine leadership and work together for the common good. And let me conclude this shiur by exploring some stories of positive leadership, not in the Torah, positive leadership that brought people together for long-lasting prosperity and good outcomes, and contrast those stories with divisive leadership that sowed seeds of chaos and hatred. I'm going to start with Antoninus Pius, who was the emperor of the Roman Empire from 138 to 161 of the Common Era, and is best known for his mild-mannered and benevolent rule. Unlike many of his predecessors, Antoninus Pius focused on stability and legal reform. His leadership was marked by a sense of duty to the Roman people and all the citizens of the Roman Empire. He improved infrastructure, funded public works, and enacted policies that promoted economic prosperity, including social welfare programs and the alleviation of suffering for the underdogs of society. His reign was characterized by peace and a lack of major conflicts, which contributed to the long-term stability of the Roman Empire. Antoninus Pius's approach to leadership was one of service and humility. He prioritized the well-being of his people and fostered unity, demonstrating that true leadership is about serving others rather than seeking power for its own sake. This was particularly remarkable, considering the history of Roman emperors before and after him, many of whom ruled with an iron fist, seeking to expand their power through conquest and oppressive measures. Emperors like Caligula and Nero were infamous for their cruelty, tyranny, and the chaos they brought to the Roman Empire. In contrast, Antoninus Pius's reign was a breath of fresh air, emphasizing stability, justice, and the prosperity of the entire empire. Another Roman emperor who epitomized this approach, not surprisingly, was Antoninus Pius's successor, Marcus Aurelius. He is known by historians as the Philosopher King. He ruled from 161 to 180 of the Common Era. Although there were some wars during his reign, which he won, Marcus Aurelius is mainly remembered for his dedication to the Stoic philosophy, which emphasized reason, duty, and humility. He wrote a work called Meditations, which contained a series of personal writings that reflected his thoughts on leadership and responsibility. For example, Meditations emphasizes the transient nature of life, reminding us to accept inevitable changes and focus on what is within our control. It also reflects Marcus Aurelius's deep sense of duty and responsibility as an emperor, highlighting the importance of ruling justly, fulfilling one's societal duties, and staying true to one's principles. These are the qualities that are also reflected in our understanding of Moshe Rabbeinu, and which was so clearly not who Korach was. Marcus Aurelius believed in leading by example. By focusing on his duty rather than personal glory, he was able to lead effectively during challenging times. His leadership brought out the best in his people, fostering a sense of collective purpose and resilience. The contrast between Marcus Aurelius's reign and that of his son Commodus is startling and revealing. Commodus brought the Roman Empire to a near collapse with his erratic and indulgent behavior. A more modern example of selfless leadership of a person who understood that leadership was about the people, not about him, was Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th President of the United States, who served from 1953 to 1961. Eisenhower was a decorated World War II general who famously presided over D-Day, but he was no warmonger. On the contrary, Eisenhower's presidency was marked by a period of economic prosperity and relative peace. His leadership style was characterized by calmness, pragmatism, and a focus on the greater good. He avoided extreme partisanship and sought common ground, promoting unity and stability. The leaders who insist that their way is right and believe that what they want must be right and therefore good for everyone are always going to fail. They might ride the crest of a wave for a while, but ultimately they crash and burn, like Korach. And more often than not, they take down lots of people with them. Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the UK Labour Party, is a good recent example. His tenure from 2015 until 2020 was marked by significant internal party strife and widespread controversy in the British political system. Corbyn's extreme ideological stance alienated many within his party and among the electorate. He claimed to be fighting for the greater good and that everyone would benefit from his stance on various issues. But it wasn't true. He cared only for himself and his cronies. Jews in the Labour Party suffered as he allowed anti-Semitism to flourish. His leadership exacerbated divisions rather than healed them. His inability to unify his party or appeal to a broader base is the perfect example of the dangers of leadership that prioritizes so-called ideological purity over practical unity and finding common ground. It is a modern Korach story. And of course we have Adolf Hitler, the infamous leader of Nazi Germany, who epitomizes the catastrophic consequences of divisive and destructive leadership. Hitler presented himself as a champion of Germany. He rose to power by exploiting societal grievances and promoting a toxic ideology of hatred and supremacy. He briefly raised Germany's fortunes, but within a matter of years. His total disdain for ethical government and his love of war and embrace of genocide brought Germany to its knees. His period in power led to unparalleled devastation, including the Holocaust, horrors of the Holocaust, and of course World War II. Hitler, like Korach, was manipulative and ruthlessly ambitious. His actions were driven by a narcissistic desire for power. Instead of bringing prosperity to the people he led, he brought about immense suffering and overwhelming chaos. Parshas Korach and these examples from world history teach us that true leadership is about humility, service, and unity. Bad leadership is about narcissistic self-regard and a thirst for power that has nothing to do with bringing good to the world. The stories of leaders like Antoninus, Pius, Marcus Aurelius, and Dwight D. Eisenhower show us that when leaders prioritize the common good and foster unity, their societies thrive. In contrast, divisive leaders like Jeremy Corbyn and Adolf Hitler remind us of the dangers of narcissistic and self-serving leadership. We should always stop and reflect on the lessons of Korach's rebellion. It should make us think about the importance of having leaders who care for us above themselves. And in our own role as leaders, we all have leadership roles of some sort as heads of families or at our workplaces. We must strive to bring people together, to promote long-lasting prosperity and to embody the virtues of humility and service. Just as Aaron's staff blossomed and bore fruit, we can be the generators of great fruit, the produce of humility, care for others, and of being the agent of God's will. May we all be blessed with leaders who guide us with wisdom, integrity, and a genuine commitment to the well-being of all, fostering a world of peace, of unity, and of great prosperity. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you.